When Farrell signed up with 7 other aging members of his local Long Island club for a weekend of golf at the Royal Caledonian Links in Scotland, he didn't foresee the relationship with the caddies, hunched little men in billed tweed caps and rubberized rain suits. They huddled in the misty gloom as the morning foursomes got organized, and reclustered after lunch, muttering as unintelligibly as sparrows for the day's second 18. Farrell would never have walked 36 holes a day in America, but here in Scotland, golf was not an accessory to life, drawing upon one's marginal energy. It was life, played out of the center of one's being. At first, stepping forth on legs, one of which had been broken in a college football game 40 years before, and which damp weather of a night of twisted sleep still provoked a reminiscent twinge. He missed the silky glide and swerve of the accustomed electric cart, its magic carpet suspension above the whispering fairway. He missed the rattle of spare balls in the retaining shelf and the round plastic holes to hold drinks, alcoholic or carbonated, and the friendly presence on the seat beside him of another gray-haired sportsman, another warty pickle blanching in the brine of time, exuding forbearance and the expectation of forbearance, and resigned like Farrell to a golfing mediocrity that would make its way down the sloping dog leg of decrepitude to the level green of death. Here, however, on the heather-rimmed fairways, cut as close as putting surfaces back at home, yet with no trace of mower tracks, and cheerfully marred by the scratchings and burrows of the nocturnal rabbits that lived and bred beneath the impenetrably thorny, waist-high gorse, energy came up through the turf, as if Farrell's cleats were making contact with primal spirits beneath the soil, and he felt he could walk forever. The rolling treeless terrain, the proximity of the wind-whipped sea, the rain that came and went with the suddenness of thought, they composed the ancient matrix of the game, and the darkly muttering caddies were also part of this matrix. That first morning, in the drizzly shuffle around the golf bags, his bag was hoisted up by a hunched shadow who, as they walked together in pursuit of Farrell's first drive, good contact but pulled to the left, towards some shaggy mounds, muttered half to himself with those hiccups or glottal stops the Scots accent inserts, "Sunday's what they call me." Farrell hesitated, then confessed, "I'm Gus." His given name, Augustus, always embarrassed him, but its shortened version seemed a little short of dignity, and at the office, as he had ascended in rank, his colleagues had settled on the initials AJ. "You want to go over the second bush for the left?" Sandy said, handing Farrell a 7-iron. The green was out of sight behind the shaggy mounds, which were covered with a long tan grass that whitened in waves as gusts beat in from the sea. "What's the distance?" Farrell was accustomed to yardage markers, yellow stakes, or sprinkler heads. The caddy looked reflectively at the sand bunker not far off, and then at the winking red signal light on the train tracks beyond, and finally at a large bird, a gull or a crow, winging against the wind beneath the low, tattered, blue-black clouds. 138 to the edge of the green, near 150 to the pin. Where they have it?" "I can't hit a 7-iron 150. I can't hit it even 40 against this wind." Yet the caddy's fist, in a fingerless wool glove, did not withdraw the offered club. "7's what you need." As Farrell bent his face to the ball, the wet wind cut across his eyes and made him cry. His tears turned one ball into two. He supposed the brighter one was the real one. He concentrated on taking the club head away slowly and low to the turf, initiating his downswing with a twitch of the left hip and suppressing his tendency to dip the right shoulder. The shot was sweet, soaring with a gentle draw precisely over the second bush. He looked toward the caddy, expecting congratulations or at least a small sign of shared pleasure, but the man whose creased face was weathered, the strangely even brown of a white actor playing Othello, followed the flight of the ball as he had that of the crow, reflectively. "Your right hand's a wee bit forward," he observed. And the ball, they saw as they climbed the green, was indeed pulled to the left, into a deep pot bunker. Furthermore, it was 15 yards short. Caddy had underclubbed him, but showed no sign of remorse as he handed Farrell the sandwich. In Sandy's dyed-looking face, pallid gray eyes showed like touches of morning light. It shocked Farrell to suspect that the other man, weathered though he was and bent beneath the weight of a perpetual golf bag, was younger than himself. A prematurely wizened pit, a concentrate of Farrell's diluted, Yankified Celtic blood. The site of the bunker toward the hole was as tall as Farrell and sheer, built up of bricks of sod in a way he had never seen before, not even at Shinnecock Hills. Rattled, irritated at having been unrepentantly underclubbed, Farrell swung 5 times into the damp brown sand, darker and denser than any sand on Long Island. Each time the ball thudded short of the trap's lip and dribbled back at his feet. "Hit it! Well behind," the caddy advised, "and dinna stop the club." Farrell's 6th swing brought the ball bobbling up onto the green within 6 feet of the hole. His fellow Americans lavished ironical praise on the tardily excellent shot, but the caddy, with the same deadpan solemnity with which Farrell had repeatedly struck the ball, handed him his putter. "Hey, ball to the left," he advised. And Farrell was so interested in this quaint concept, the ball as a unit of measure, that his putt stopped short. "You forgot to eat it, goose," Sandy told him. Farrell tersely nodded. The caddy made him feel obliged to keep up a show of golfing virtues. As for his score, he said loudly in a stagey voice, "That was an honest 10. "We'll call it a 6, said the player keeping score, in a forgiving, corrupting American way. As the round progressed, through a rapid alternation of brisk showers and silvery sunshine with rainbows springing up around them and tiny white daisies gleaming underfoot, Farrell and his caddy began to grow into one another, as a foot in damp weather grows into a shoe. Sandy consistently handed Farrell one club too short to make the green, but Farrell came to accept the failure as his own. His caddy was handing the club to a stronger golfer latent inside of Farrell. It was Farrell's job to let this superior performer out, to release him from his stiff, soft, more than middle-aged body. On the 12th hole, called Dunrobin, a seemingly endless par 5 with a broad stretch of fairway, bleak and vaguely restless like the surface of the moon, receding over a distant edge marked by 2 small pot bunkers, with a pale green arm of gorse extending from the rabbit-undermined thickets on the left, his drive clicked. Something about the ghostly emptiness of this terrain, the featurelessness of it, had removed Farrell's physical inhibitions. He felt the steel shaft of the driver bend in a subtle curve at his back. and a corresponding springiness awakened in his knees, and he knew as his weight elastically moved from right foot to left that he would bring the club face squarely into the ball, and indeed did, so that the ball, the last of his Titleists, the others having already been swallowed by gorse and heather and cliffside scree, was melting deep into the drizzle straight ahead almost before he looked up, with his head still sideways as if pillowed on his right ear, just like the pros on television. He cocked an eye at Sandy. "Okay?" asked Farrell, mock modest, but also genuinely fearful of some hazards, some trick of the layout that he had missed taking into account. "Golf shot, sir," the caddy said. His face, as if touched by a magic wand, crumpled into a smile of crooked gray teeth, his constantly relit cigarette adhering to one corner. Small matter that Farrell, striving for a repetition of his elastic sensations, topped the following 3-wood, hit a 5-iron fat and short, and sculled his wedge shot clear across the elevated green. He had, for a second, awakened the golf giant sleeping among his muscles, and imagined himself now cutting a more significant figure in the other man's not quite colorless, not quite indifferent eyes. Farrell studied Sandy's face. Rain and sleet bounced off the brown skin as if from a waxy preservative coating. Dinner for this week of foreign excursion was a repeated male event involving the same 8 Long Island males, their hair growing curly and their faces ruddy away from the arid Manhattan canyons and air-conditioned offices where they had accumulated their small fortunes. They discussed their caddies as men extremely unbuttoned might discuss their mistresses. What does a caddy want? "Come on, Freddie! Eat it for once!" The very distinguished banker Frederick M. Penoply boasted that his had cried out at him, as on the third day of displaying his cautious, successful down-the-middle game, he painstakingly addressed his ball. Another man's caddy, when asked what he thought of Mrs. Thatcher, had responded with a twinkle, "She'd be a good hump." Farrell, prim and reserved by nature, though not devoid of passion, had relatively little to offer concerning Sandy. He worried that the man's incessant smoking would kill him. He wondered if the tips he gave them were too far below what a Japanese golfer would have bestowed. He feared that Sandy was becoming tired of him. As the week went on, their relationship had become more intuitive. A 6-iron, Farrell would now say, and without a word, would be handed the club. Once he had dared decline an offered 6, asked for a 5, and sailed his unusually well-struck shot into the sedge behind the green. On the greens, where he at first had been bothered by the caddy's explicit directives, so that he forgot to stroke the ball firmly, Farrell had come to depend on Sandy's advice and would expertly cock his ear close to the caddy's mouth and try to envision the curve of the ball into the center of the hole from an inch and a fingernail to the left. He began to sink putts. He began to get pars as the white caps flashed one side of the links, and on the other, the wine-red electric commuter trains swiftly glided up to Glasgow and back. This was happiness, bracketed between sea and rail, and freedom of a wild and a windy sort. On the morning of his last day, having sliced his first drive into the edge of the rough, between a thistle and what appeared to be a child's weathered tombstone, Farrell bent his ear close to the caddy's mouth for advice and heard, "He'd better be leaving her." Beg pardon?" Farrell said. Today the acoustics were especially bad. A near gale off the sea made his rain pants rattle like machine guns and deformed his eyeballs with air pressure as he tried to squint down. When he could stop seeing double, his lie looked fair, semi-embedded. The name on the tombstone was worn away. Perhaps it was merely an ancient railroad right-of-way marker. "Your missus," Sandy clarified, passing over an andiron. "Yeah, it's too late, man. She was never your type. Too proper." Shouldn't this be a wedge?" Farrell asked uncertainly. "Nay, it's sitting up good enough," the caddy said, pressing his foot into the heather behind the ball so it rose up like ooze out of mud. "You can reach with the height." "Go for your par, man. Your thoughts are in your mind. You tend to play ahead defensive." Farrell would have dismissed Sandy's previous remarks as a verbal mirage amid the clicks and skips of wind-blown Scots. They not seem so uncannily true. Too proper was exactly what his college friends had said of Sylvia. But he had imagined that her physical beauty had been the significant thing, and her propriety a pose she would outgrow, whereas 35 married years had revealed the propriety as enduring and the beauty as transient. As to leaving her, this thought would never have entered his head until recently. The mergers and acquisitions branch had recently taken on a certain Irma Feingold, who had heavy-lidded eyes, full lips, painted vermilion, and a curious, presumptuous way of teasing Farrell in the eddies of chit-chat before and after conferences or in the elevator up to the boardroom. She had been recently divorced, and when she talked to Farrell, she manipulated her lower lip with a pencil eraser and shimmied her shoulders beneath her pads. On nights when the office worked late, he liked occasionally to demonstrate that well along though he was, he could still pull an all-nighter with the young bucks. There had been between him and Irma shared Chinese meals in greasy takeout cartons and a joint limo home in the dawn light. Through the twinned arches and aspiring tracery of the Brooklyn Bridge. And on one undreamed-of occasion, there had been an invitation which he did not refuse, to delay his return to Long Island with an interlude at her apartment in Park Slope. Though no young buck, he had done not badly, it seemed to him, even factoring in the flattery quotient from a subordinate. The 8-iron pinched the ball clean, and the Atlantic gale brought the soaring shot left to right toward the pin. "Laved edge, but didn't get the hole away," Sandy advised for the putt, and Farrell sank it in for the first birdie of his week of golf. Now suddenly, out of the silvery torn sky, sleet and sunshine poured simultaneously. While the two men walked at the same tilt to the next tee, Sandy's call came out of the wind. "And steer clear of the Millicorp deal. They've leveraged the company to death." Farrell studied Sandy's face. Rain and sleet bounced off the brown skin as if from a waxy preservative coating. Metallic gleams showed as the man studied, through narrowed eyelids, the watery horizon. Farrell pretended he hadn't heard. On the tee, he was handed a 3-wood with the advice, "You want to stay short of the wee burn. The winds come around from behind, bringing the sun with it." As the round wore on, the sun did struggle through, and a thick rainbow planted itself over the profile of the drab town between the tracks, with its black steeples and distillery chimneys. By the afternoon's 18, there was actually blue sky, and the pockets of lengthening shadow showed the old course to be everywhere curvaceous, crest and swale like the body of a woman. 40 feet off the green on the 14th, Whinny Bray. Farrell docilely accepted the caddy's offer of a putter, rolled it up and over the close mown irregularities with a gimme of a hole. His old self would have sculled or fluffed a chip. Great advice, he said, and in his flush of triumph, challenged the caddy. But Irma loves the mini cork deal. Hey, to keep the tween together, she's fearful you'll wander off in the halls of corporate power. But what does she see in me? Looking for a father, the case may be. That first husband of hers was a meikle immature, and also far from your own income bracket. Farrell felt his heart sink at the deflating shrewdness of this analysis. His mind elsewhere, absented by bittersweet sorrow, he hit one pure shot after another. Looking to the caddy for praise, however, he met the same impassive, dour, young old visage, opaque beneath the billed tweed cap. Tomorrow he would be caddying for someone else, and Farrell would be belted into a business class seat within a 747. On the home stretch of holes, one after the other strung out beside the railroad right-of-way, as the Victorian brick clubhouse with its turrets and neo-Gothic windows enlarged in size, Farrell begged for the last scraps of advice. The 5-wood or the 3-iron? The 3 keeps it down out of the wind, but I feel more confident with the wood, the way you've been getting me swinging. The 5 will be o'er and gone. You've a ball pumped up. Take the 4-iron, smooth it on, laddie. Aim for the little brook. Brook? We stone fortress, frae the days when we had our own bra king. And you might be thinking about taking early retirement. The severance deals won't be as sweet, eh? With the coming recession. You can free yourself up and take on some consults for the spare change. Just what I was thinking, if Irma's a will-o'-the-wisp. Will-o'-the-wisp, did you say? You're a speedy learner, Goose. Farrell felt flattered and wind-scoured here in this surging universe of green and gray. You really think so, Sandy? I can say. You can tell a lot about a man frae the way he gouts.